Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I'm just not good at this?
Oh, definitely. We all have those moments.
Yeah, maybe it's, I don't know, learning some new software or tackling a really challenging project at work, maybe even just trying a new hobby.
Right, something where you hit a wall.
Exactly. And if you feel stuck thinking your abilities in certain areas, or maybe even overall, are just fixed, unchangeable,
Like that's just how you are.
then this deep dive is specifically for you. We're going to try and unlock a really powerful truth. You absolutely can develop your skills and intelligence.
It's not set in stone.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And understanding this, really understanding it, can transform how you approach challenges, sure, but also opportunities, really, throughout your life.
Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take that stack of sources you've sent over articles, research papers, notes, all of it, and we meticulously pull out the most important, the most actionable insights just for you.
And today, we're diving deep into a topic that honestly sits at the very core of human potential, of learning. The power of your mindset.
Yeah, it touches everything. The material you've gathered, it explores some really groundbreaking research, compelling real-world examples too, and very practical strategies.
And it really reveals just how much our beliefs, the beliefs about our own abilities actually shape our reality.
It's profound, really. Our mission in this deep dive is to help you walk away with a crystal clear understanding of what a mindset actually is, how it exerts this, well, huge influence on your world.
And maybe most importantly, giving you concrete ways you can choose to change it. If you want to, of course.
Exactly. Choice is key. Now, at the heart of our exploration today is this fundamental distinction, and it's illuminated so clearly in the sources. The difference between what's called a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Okay, let's define those based on the research. Fixed mindset first.
Right. So, based on the research papers you shared, a fixed mindset is essentially the belief that your core human qualities, think intelligence, talents, even personality, are static traits. They're fixed.
Like you get a certain amount and that's your lot.
Pretty much. You have a certain amount and that's it. You're sort of born with them, and they don't really change in any significant way. People with this mindset, they often tend to believe you either have it or you don't.
So if I think I'm not good at math, a fixed mindset would tell me, well, I guess I was just born bad at math. Nothing I can do about it.
Exactly. It feels very deterministic, like fate.
Yeah, a bit limiting.
Very. But the growth mindset, which is detailed extensively in your sources, offers a dramatically different perspective. It's the belief that those same qualities, intelligence, talent, can be developed. They can be strengthened.
Through what?
Through dedication, hard work, using effective strategies, and really importantly, learning from your experiences, the good and the bad. It sees potential everywhere. It focuses on the journey of improvement, not just where you start or where you are right now.
And the really exciting, the fundamentally empowering message that just leaps out from every source you provided is this. Your mindset, this belief system about your abilities, it's absolutely not permanent. It's not immutable.
It's not hardwired?
It's changeable.
Is that right?
Precisely. It's flexible. And this is where Carol Dweck comes in, the renowned psychologist whose pioneering work is really central to all the material you've shared.
Right. Her name comes up constantly in this research.
As it should. She puts it so simply, yet so profoundly in a quote you included. Mindsets are just beliefs, and you can change your mind.
You can change your mind. Wow. That phrase hits differently when you realize it applies to something as fundamental as how you view your own potential.
Doesn't it?
It immediately gives you this sense of agency. Control over something that might have felt completely outside your control before. It does. And that agency, that's really the key takeaway we want you to have from this deep dive. We're going to explore the psychology, the surprising science underpinning these ideas. We'll share some vivid, real-world stories from your sources that show the dramatic impact of shifting mindset.
I love a good story.
And then critically, provide you with practical, evidence-based strategies you can start using today to cultivate a growth mindset in your own life.
Think of this as your personalized guide, then, to understanding and leveraging one of the most powerful levers for personal and professional growth available to you.
Exactly.
It's an empowering journey, really, learning how to step beyond those self-imposed limits just by adjusting your perspective. So let's really get into the core of it, understanding mindset, the psychology, and the fascinating science that backs it all up.
Let's do it. So as we touched upon, the core difference is how you conceptualize your attributes, your qualities. Fixed mindset sees them as static, right? Like a fixed height measurement, you are this tall. End of story.
Set in stone.
Yeah. Whereas the growth mindset sees them dynamically, more like uh, physical fitness, something you can build, something you can improve with training and effort.
Okay, but where did this whole idea really come from? I mean, it sounds intuitive in a way, but the sources frame it as a specific psychological construct.
It is. While, the basic concept that hard work pays off isn't exactly new, Dr. Carol Dweck really formalized these terms, fixed and growth mindset, and she extensively researched their implications. Her seminal work, detailed in your source material, especially her 2006 book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success.
Right, that's the classic one.
It really stemmed from this fundamental question she was trying to answer. Why do some people, when they face significant challenges, setbacks, failures, why do they seem to bounce back, even thrive sometimes?
While others facing similar difficulties just seem to get discouraged or give up or plateau.
Exactly. That was the puzzle she wanted to solve.
It's a question most of us can relate to, I think, whether it's school, sports, our jobs. So what did her early research actually reveal?
Well, her foundational findings, and these have been replicated in numerous studies included in your sources, they were really striking. She found that students' beliefs about the nature of intelligence directly impacted their learning behaviors and, crucially, their academic performance.
How so?
Specifically, students who believed their intelligence was something that could be cultivated, that it could be increased through effort. Those with a growth mindset, they consistently showed greater resilience when things got tough academically.
They didn't give up as easily.
Right. And critically, they consistently outperformed their peers who believed intelligence was just a fixed trait they were born with.
Wait, hang on. So it wasn't necessarily about their initial intelligence level, like their IQ score or whatever. It was more about what they believed about whether that intelligence could change.
Precisely.
Huh.
The belief itself was a significant predictor of their academic trajectory. And here's where one of your sources highlighted a particularly compelling piece of research. Dweck and her colleagues, they actually conducted interventions where they explicitly taught students about the concept of a growth mindset. They explained that the brain actually gets stronger with effort and learning, like a muscle.
Okay, and what happened?
What happened? Simply teaching them this fact led to a tangible improvement in their academic grades, particularly in challenging subjects like math.
That is incredible. Just understanding that their brains could improve actually empowered them to improve their performance.
It shifted their whole frame.
It shifts the focus, doesn't it? From, am I smart enough?
Yeah.
To something more like, am I trying the right things? Am I learning effectively?
Exactly. It really underscores how profoundly our metacognitive beliefs, our beliefs about our own thinking and learning processes, influence our actual capacity to learn and achieve. Believing you can develop your abilities gives you the motivation, the framework, to put in the necessary effort.
And this isn't just about school, right? This belief system must have deep implications for our motivation, our behaviors, in pretty much every area of life.
Absolutely. How you think about your talents and abilities, it directly shapes the actions you take or don't take.
Okay, paint a picture. Fixed mindset facing a tough task.
All right. Someone with a fixed mindset, they're facing something difficult. If they believe their intelligence or talent is fixed, they might just avoid the task altogether, especially if there's a risk of failing or looking incompetent.
Why put yourself out there if failure means you just don't have it?
Exactly. Why test that perceived limited ability? And if they do try and encounter a setback, they're much more likely to feel discouraged, maybe give up quickly. They interpret the difficulty as proof of their inherent limitations. The sources you shared detail how this translates into behaviors like avoiding challenges, low persistence, that sort of thing.
It sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy of stagnation almost.
In many ways, it absolutely can be. It becomes about protecting the ego's perception of a fixed, hopefully sufficient ability.
Okay, now contrast that. Growth mindset, same tough task.
Right. Someone operating with a growth mindset views that same difficult task completely differently. It's not primarily a test of innate ability. It's an opportunity to learn and grow.
So challenges are actually good.
They're embraced
Yeah.
because they see them as the very pathway to developing new skills. And setbacks, they aren't personal indictments. They're valuable feedback, just information about what didn't work, which helps figure out the next attempt.
So they persevere.
They persevere because they believe effort, combined with trying different strategies, is the key to making progress.
That fundamentally redefines the role of struggle, doesn't it? Struggle isn't proof you're not good enough. It's actually proof you're learning.
Precisely. And this difference in approach, it translates into very concrete benefits. Your sources provide evidence from, well, over 3 decades of research now on the positive outcomes linked to a growth mindset.
Okay, so what are some of those key benefits we see?
Well, we see improved performance. Like in the student studies we mentioned, we see significantly greater resilience in the face of adversity. People with a growth mindset, they bounce back faster. They learn from failures instead of being crushed by them.
That's huge.
It is. And there's a stronger, more sustained commitment to lifelong learning and personal development. You become someone who actively seeks out new knowledge and skills because you genuinely believe you can acquire them.
And the sources also highlighted something interesting about the impact this can have on individuals facing societal stereotypes about their group's abilities in certain fields. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's a critical point the research emphasizes. Studies have shown, for example, that women and minority students in challenging STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math, they demonstrate increased confidence, engagement, and ultimately achievement when they're exposed to and encouraged to adopt a growth mindset.
How does that work?
Well, think about it. If the internal narrative shifts from potentially absorbing negative external stereotypes like people from my background aren't typically good at science to an empowered belief in their own ability to develop skills through effort and learning, well, that can significantly counteract those external pressures and unlock potential that might otherwise have been suppressed.
Okay, let's get to the part I find absolutely fascinating and where the science really seems to underpin all of this. Neuroplasticity. The sources mention this is the biological basis for why a growth mindset actually works.
Yes. This is where modern neuroscience provides the physical proof, if you like. For a long time, scientists believed the brain was largely fixed in adulthood. You had the brain you were born with, and that was pretty much it for major changes.
Right, that was the old thinking.
But research over the past few decades has completely overturned that. It's revealed the remarkable adaptability of the brain, and that's neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself throughout life by forming new neural connections.
So literally, when we learn something new or practice a skill, our brain is physically changing.
Exactly. Every time you engage in a new learning experience, practice a skill, or even just think about something in a different way, you are forming new connections between neurons. And existing connections that you use frequently, they become stronger, faster, more efficient.
Like building pathways.
Yeah, think of it like building a road network in your brain or strengthening the internet cables. The more you use a particular pathway, say the neural network for playing the guitar, or understanding complex equations, or even practicing a new language, the more robust and efficient that specific pathway becomes.
That principle, neurons that fire together, wire together, which you mentioned was highlighted in one source, really captures it, doesn't it?
It does. It's a catchy way to remember it. The more you practice a thought pattern or a skill, the more physically connected those parts of the brain become.
And this isn't just a metaphor. You mentioned a study earlier.
Right, the study where they explicitly taught students about neuroplasticity, explaining that their brains could literally rewire and grow stronger through effort.
Yeah.
The result was that tangible increase in their grades. Simply understanding the biological capacity for their brain to improve sent a powerful message. You can improve your abilities. It gives a scientific grounding for the belief that effort matters, that change is physically possible in the brain.
And even the language we use, the words we choose, internally and externally, seems to impact this. The sources pointed out Dweck's work on just one tiny phrase.
The immense power of the simple word, yet.
Tell me about that.
Dweck's research showed a really striking difference in how students responded when they were told they had failed versus being told they weren't there yet.
Okay.
Hearing you failed is often interpreted by someone with a fixed mindset as a final judgment on their ability. It's like a dead end.
Yeah.
Okay, I failed, that's it.
But adding yet.
Hearing you haven't mastered it yet fundamentally changes the message. It signals that you're on a learning curve.
Right. It implies your current state is temporary.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is you're in a process of development, and that success is still attainable with continued effort and learning. It replaces that final judgment with potential, possibility. Your source specifically highlights how this linguistic shift encourages persistence and reframes setbacks as just temporary stages in a longer journey.
It feels like such a small thing, just one word, but it sounds like it can completely alter the trajectory of someone's motivation and effort.
It absolutely can. It's
Yeah.
a powerful, easily adoptable tool. And while Dweck's initial work laid this incredible foundation, subsequent research, as reflected in the sources you gathered, has definitely refined our understanding. It's also addressed some common misinterpretations that have popped up as the concept became more popular.
Yes, because when I first heard growth mindset, I admit I might have oversimplified it in my head. It sounded a bit like, be really positive and everything will magically work out, or maybe just try harder no matter what.
And that's precisely the kind of common misconception that your sources wisely address. A growth mindset is absolutely not just about forced optimism or, crucially, blindly praising ineffective effort. Dweck herself has cautioned strongly against what she terms a false growth mindset.
Okay, tell me more about this false growth mindset. What does that look like in practice?
Well, it's when the language of growth mindset is used, but the underlying practices or genuine understanding are missing. For example, it might involve praising a student endlessly just for effort, even if they aren't using effective strategies or making any actual progress.
Just spinning their wheels but getting praised for it.
Right, or telling someone you can do anything if you just believe,
Yeah.
without providing any actual support, resources, or constructive feedback on how they might improve. One source makes it clear it's not just about saying effort is good, it's understanding what kind of effort, what strategies, and what support are needed for genuine growth to occur.
Ah, so it's not just brute force effort then. The effort needs to be strategic, informed.
Precisely. The sources emphasize this crucial nuance. A growth mindset isn't simply try harder. It's more like try different things, keep learning, adapt. Effort is essential, of course, but it has to be informed, directed, and coupled with a willingness to change strategies, seek help when you're stuck, and learn from what isn't working.
Just banging your head against the same wall with more force isn't growth.
Exactly. As Dweck is quoted saying in one source, students need to try new strategies and seek input from others when they're stuck. They need this repertoire of approaches, not just sheer effort to learn and improve. It's really about learning smarter, not just working harder.
That's a really vital distinction. And what about the environment someone is in? Does that play a role? Can you have a growth mindset in a really negative place?
That plays a huge role. Another key insight highlighted consistently in your sources is that individual mindset exists within a context. Holding a growth mindset belief is powerful, absolutely, but its impact is significantly amplified or, conversely, stifled by the surrounding environment.
So like the culture at work or school.
Exactly. If you're in a workplace, a school, or even a family where mistakes are severely punished, where asking for help is viewed as a sign of weakness, or where only perfect outcomes are ever celebrated, well, it becomes incredibly difficult for a growth mindset to truly flourish, regardless of your individual beliefs. Several sources discuss how a toxic or overly critical environment can really undermine even strong individual motivation towards growth.
So simply believing in growth isn't enough if the culture around you doesn't support experimentation and learning from failure.
Exactly. The most impactful situations are where an individual's growth mindset is reinforced and actively enabled by a supportive culture. A culture that genuinely values the process of learning, that welcomes challenges, and that treats setbacks not as failures to be hidden, but as opportunities for collective improvement. Creating these conditions, for yourself and for others if you're in a position to influence, is paramount.
It's about valuing progress, the journey, over just that often unrealistic expectation of immediate, perfect results.
Perfectly put. And before we dive into the practical how-to of shifting mindset, the sources suggest a moment of personal reflection is necessary first. Right.
Yes, that's presented as a really crucial first step. Before you can effectively shift your mindset, you need to understand where you currently stand. The prompt is essentially to take a moment, be honest with yourself, and identify areas in your own life where you tend to default to a fixed mindset.
Where do you catch yourself thinking, I'm just not good at this, and I probably never will be?
Right. Is it public speaking? Maybe a particular technical skill for work, a creative pursuit, even a personal habit you feel stuck with?
And conversely, it's also helpful to think about where you already demonstrate a growth mindset. Where do you feel comfortable being a beginner, making mistakes, trying again, and persisting through difficulty?
Identifying both sides of the coin.
Exactly. And the goal here isn't self-judgment or criticism for having fixed mindset tendencies. Let's be clear, we all have them in certain areas. The goal is simply awareness. As the sources underscore, you have to recognize the pattern. You have to hear that fixed mindset voice when it speaks up before you can consciously choose to respond differently and begin that process of change.
Awareness is the foundation.
It's the foundation upon which all the following strategies are built.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Let's say I've done that reflection. I've identified some areas where that fixed mindset voice is pretty loud for me. Now, how do I actually do the shift? How do I cultivate this growth mindset in practice? Because it definitely sounds like it's not a one-time flip of a switch.
Oh, absolutely not. It is very much a journey, a process. It requires consistent practice, just like building any new habit or skill. Your sources provide a set of really practical, evidence-based strategies that act like mental workouts, designed to gradually reshape your thinking and behavior over time.
Mental workouts, I like that.
And each small shift you make, each time you consciously choose that growth perspective instead of the fixed one, you reinforce this new way of thinking. You're strengthening that muscle.
Okay, so what's the first tactical step? Strategy number one.
Strategy number one is recognize your inner fixed mindset voice and reframe it. This flows directly from that self-awareness piece. Start paying really close attention to that internal narrative that limits you, that voice that delivers those absolute, often negative judgments. I'm terrible at this. I'm never going to understand. This is just too hard. I should probably give up.
That's the fixed mindset talking.
That's it. And the key is catching it in the moment.
Which takes practice, I imagine.
It definitely takes practice,
Yeah.
especially if that voice has been running on autopilot for years. But once you catch it, you suddenly realize you have a critical choice point right there in that moment. Do you passively accept that limiting statement as truth, or do you actively challenge it? One source even touches on this internal dialogue.
Okay, so how do you challenge it effectively? What do you say back?
This is where the power of yet, which we mentioned earlier, becomes your immediate go-to tool. When the voice says, I'm not good at this, you consciously respond, internally or even out loud if it helps. I'm not good at this yet, but I can learn.
Ah, the yet.
When it says, this is too difficult, you reframe it as, okay, this is difficult, which probably means I'm learning something valuable right now. Another source strongly advocates for exactly this kind of linguistic shift.
And by consistently doing this reframing, we're actually connecting back to the neuroplasticity we talked about. We're literally training our brains.
Precisely. Every single time you choose to actively challenge a fixed thought and reframe it with a growth perspective, you are literally firing a different set of neural connections. You're weakening the pathways associated with that old fixed mindset response, and you're strengthening the pathways associated with the growth mindset response.
It's a mental workout, like you said.
It is. You're training your brain over time to default to I can learn and improve instead of defaulting to I lack the innate ability.
Okay, step one. Recognize the voice, catch it, and reframe it, often using yet or focusing on the learning aspect. What's strategy number two?
Strategy number two, embrace challenges and fail forward. This is a real hallmark behavior of a growth mindset. It means making a conscious effort to step outside your comfort zone regularly. Actively seek out tasks or learning opportunities that you know will stretch you, things you might not be immediately good at.
But that brings up the fear again, doesn't it? The fear of looking foolish or incompetent or just failing.
It absolutely does. And that fear is often deeply rooted in the fixed mindset's desire to maintain the image of existing competence. Don't risk looking bad. But the growth mindset reorients this completely. It sees challenges not as threats to your ego, but as the necessary friction that actually produces growth.
Like resistance training for the brain.
Exactly. You have to consciously remind yourself everyone who is an expert at something complex was once a complete beginner. Feeling challenged is actually a positive sign. It means you are attempting to expand your capabilities.
And how does failure fit into this embracing challenges idea? Because failure feels like the opposite of success.
Well, in a growth mindset, failure is redefined. It's not the opposite of success. It's often part of the path to success. It's not a final judgment on you. It's valuable information about the task or the approach you took. Your sources are filled with examples of highly successful people who failed repeatedly.
Right, like Michael Jordan getting cut from his high school team.
Or J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter manuscript being rejected by numerous publishers initially. Their failures weren't endpoints. They were data points that fueled their persistence and led them to adjust their strategies.
And the Sarah Blakely example from one of the sources is such a perfect illustration of actively reframing failure, isn't it?
It's incredibly powerful. Her father's tradition asking them, what did you fail at today? And then celebrating it. It wasn't about liking the feeling of failure itself. It was about valuing the effort and the risk-taking that inevitably leads to failure sometimes.
It taught her that if you're not failing, you're probably not pushing your limits enough. You're playing it too safe.
Exactly. And that mindset was absolutely crucial when she started Spanx with zero experience in the fashion or retail industry. Every no she received wasn't proof she couldn't do it. It was information she needed to refine her pitch or find a different manufacturer or try a new angle. Embracing potential failure as just a necessary part of pushing forward unleashed her incredible persistence and creativity.
So the habit here is seek out challenging opportunities, accept that failure is a possibility, maybe even likely when you're stretching, and then actively treat every setback as a learning opportunity. Ask yourself, okay, what did I learn from that attempt? What will I try differently next time?
Precisely. You're cultivating resilience by fundamentally changing your relationship with mistakes and setbacks.
Okay, strategy 3.
Strategy 3. Focus on the process, not just the outcome. This is absolutely key for sustaining motivation, especially during those long, sometimes frustrating learning curves. A fixed mindset often fixates solely on the end result, the A grade, the promotion, the finished product, the win. A growth mindset learns to find value and satisfaction in the journey itself. The effort exerted, the strategies explored, the small incremental improvements made along the way, the learning that happened.
So it's about shifting from having purely performance goals to also including, maybe even prioritizing, learning goals.
Exactly. Instead of setting only a performance goal like get a perfect score in the next presentation, you set learning goals alongside it, like spend 30 minutes researching effective openings, or practice the delivery 3 times in front of a mirror, or ask a trusted colleague for specific feedback on clarity.
Or for learning a language instead of be fluent in 6 months.
Right, which is a huge performance goal.
Yeah.
A learning goal would be practice speaking for 15 minutes daily with a language partner, or learn 10 new vocabulary words every single day, or watch 1 news broadcast in that language each week. These learning goals focus on the controllable inputs and the actual process of acquiring the skill.
And focusing on that process is what Dweck's research showed is more effective for actual long-term improvement and building resilience, right? More than just focusing on the final score.
Absolutely. Praising process things like specific effort, the use of effective strategies showing improvement over time in her studies consistently led to better long-term outcomes.
Yeah.
And more resilience than simply praising someone for being smart or only acknowledging the final perfect result. Several sources reinforce this heavily. When you praise the process, you reinforce the belief that these actions are the things that lead to success, not some innate, fixed trait you either have or don't.
So a daily practice related to this could be consciously noticing and celebrating small process wins, even tiny ones.
Yes, absolutely. Did you manage to push through reading that dense chapter? Did you ask that clarifying question in the meeting even though you felt a bit intimidated? Did you stick with practicing that musical scale for 10 minutes even when you were tired and felt like quitting? Acknowledge and mentally celebrate those moments. Those are the micro victories in the learning process. And the idea is when you value and focus on the process, the desired outcomes are much more likely to follow naturally.
Strategy 4. Seek feedback and learn from criticism. Okay, this one feels like it could be particularly challenging for that fixed mindset ego we talked about earlier. Criticism can sting.
It absolutely can. And that's because for a fixed mindset, criticism often feels like a direct attack on their core fixed ability. The thinking goes, you're criticizing my work, which means I am fundamentally not good enough at this. So the tendency is to avoid feedback or get defensive, or maybe just shut down when receiving it.
But the growth mindset sees it differently.
Completely differently. For a growth mindset, feedback, even critical feedback, is simply information. It's data. It's valuable data points that help you understand where you can improve your skills, your approach, your understanding.
So frame it as a gift, not a judgment.
Exactly. And the strategy here is twofold. First, actively seek out feedback from diverse sources. Don't just rely on people who will always tell you you're great. Seek out mentors, peers, supervisors, coaches, even customers, people who you trust, can offer honest, constructive critique.
And second, how you receive the criticism.
Yes. When you receive criticism, especially if it stings initially, practice pausing. Take a breath. Try your best to listen objectively, rather than immediately formulating a defense. Consciously reframe it in your mind. This person is trying to give me insights I can potentially use to get better.
Look for the useful nugget, maybe, even if the delivery isn't perfect or you don't agree with everything.
Yes, exactly. Even if you think some of the feedback is off base, try to look for at least one useful thing you can take away and potentially act on. This practice, over time, trains you to become hungry for learning, even when it's uncomfortable. Your sources highlight that organizations and teams improve much faster when they have a culture where feedback is open and mistakes are discussed constructively, compared to cultures where they're hidden. The same applies individually.
So instead of defensively thinking they think I'm terrible, you shift to asking questions like, okay, what specific thing could I do differently next time based on this? Or can they suggest a different approach I might try?
Right. You actively solicit those outside perspectives to refine your own approach. Feedback becomes fuel for improvement.
Okay, strategy 5. Cultivate grit through yet thinking.
This builds directly on our earlier discussion of the power of yet and connects very strongly with the fascinating work of psychologist Angela Duckworth on grit.
Right, grit being passion and perseverance for long-term goals.
Exactly. Duckworth's research, which is referenced in your sources, defines grit as that potent combination of perseverance and passion directed towards very long-term goals. And guess what provides the ideal fertile ground for grit to develop?
A growth mindset.
Growth mindset. Because if you fundamentally believe you can improve, that your abilities aren't fixed, you're far more likely to stick with something hard over the long haul.
The not yet philosophy is inherently about the long game.
It is. It tells you that your current struggles or lack of mastery are not your destiny, and that sustained strategic effort will eventually lead to progress. This mindset is what helps you push through those inevitable plateaus, setbacks, and periods of frustratingly slow progress that always happen on the path to mastering anything worthwhile.
So how can someone actively cultivate this grit-fueled yet thinking? What are the practical steps?
Well, one technique suggested in your sources is maintaining a kind of growth mindset journal or log. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Each day or week, maybe just reflect briefly on a challenge you faced. Describe how you initially responded. Did that fixed mindset voice pop up? Then detail the steps you took to tackle it. Did you try new strategies? Did you ask for help?
And most importantly,
Write down what you learned from the experience, even if it was small, or what you plan to do differently next time based on that experience. Actually, seeing your struggles, your efforts, and the lessons learned written down reinforces the narrative that you are capable of growth and learning, even from difficulty.
it makes the learning process visible and concrete.
Yes. And alongside that, keep practicing that conscious yet in your self-talk, and maybe even when talking to others about struggles. I'm really struggling to get this project organized yet. I'm not confident speaking up in these big meetings yet. This small linguistic adjustment, as highlighted in one source, fosters optimism and makes daunting long-term goals feel more achievable because it frames them as being on a trajectory towards future success rather than impossible hurdles.
And by consistently practicing this, you reinforce the habit of persisting.
Exactly. You build the muscle of perseverance, which is the core of grit. Every attempt, even if it doesn't lead to the immediate outcome you wanted, becomes valuable practice and moves you incrementally closer to that tough long-term goal.
Okay, strategy 6. Surround yourself with growth-minded people. This one is about external influence.
Yes, because mindset can be surprisingly contagious. The attitudes and beliefs of the people closest to you and the messages you consume regularly can significantly influence your own perspective, for better or worse. So it pays to pay attention to the prevailing mindset in your social circles, your workplace, and even the media you engage with.
Are the people around you generally complainers who believe things are fixed and people can't change? Or are they more like encouragers who see potential, value learning, and talk about growth?
Exactly. The strategy here is to consciously seek out and try to spend more time with people who embody a growth mindset. Look for mentors, colleagues, or friends who actively challenge themselves, who are open and honest about their own learning processes and struggles, who admit mistakes freely without defensiveness, and who genuinely celebrate effort and progress in themselves and others. Their attitudes and behaviors will naturally tend to rub off on you over time.
And maybe being open about your own growth goals can help attract the right kind of support.
It absolutely can. Sharing that you're working on a particular skill or trying to adopt a more growth-oriented approach in a certain area can sometimes attract support and valuable advice from those around you who are on a similar path or have maybe navigated that territory before.
And what about other influences like books or podcasts?
Definitely. Actively expose yourself to inspiring stories. Read biographies or memoirs of people who overcame significant challenges through sheer perseverance and a commitment to learning. Listen to podcasts, watch documentaries, read articles about individuals who started with very little but achieved great things because they believed in their capacity to grow and adapted relentlessly along the way.
Stories of founders who pivoted, athletes who came back from injury, artists who honed their craft.
Yes, those stories reinforce the belief that growth is possible and that effort is the engine. Seeing how others have navigated immense challenges through effort and learning makes you think, well, if they could do that, maybe I can tackle my own challenge too. It builds possibility.
As we're talking about this being a journey, a process, not an overnight fix, it sounds like self-compassion must be pretty important along the way. It's not always going to be easy.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Adopting a growth mindset isn't about achieving perfection or never having a fixed thought again. That's unrealistic.
Yeah.
There will be days when you slip up, days when that old fixed mindset voice screams really loudly, days when you feel discouraged after a setback.
And the key is not to beat yourself up for it.
Exactly. Recognize it, acknowledge it without judgment, gently remind yourself, okay, that was a fixed mindset thought kicking in, but that's all right. I can choose a growth mindset response now. I slipped, but I can get back on track. Yet.
Be kind to yourself during the process.
So it really is like training a muscle in the gym, as you said. You have good days and bad days, maybe days you skip, but the consistency over time is what builds the strength. That's a perfect analogy, and it's reinforced by the neuroplasticity science we discussed. As one performance coach was quoted in a source, we can train the brain just like we train the body. These strategies we've walked through, recognizing and reframing thoughts, seeking challenges, valuing process, getting feedback, using yet, surrounding yourself with supportive people, these are your daily mental workout routines.
And consistently practicing them, even imperfectly.
Strengthens those neural pathways associated with curiosity, resilience, persistence, and that core belief in your ability to grow. Over time, you'll likely find you handle setbacks with more optimism, tackle challenges with greater courage, and maybe even find more joy in the actual process of becoming better, not just in reaching the destination.
That's incredibly practical and feels genuinely empowering. And the sources didn't just stop at how we can change ourselves. They also looked quite a bit at how we can extend this mindset and help coach or foster it in others. This seems huge for anyone in a leadership position, a manager, a teacher, a parent.
Exactly. Once you start internalizing and practicing a growth mindset yourself, you are naturally much better positioned to help cultivate it in the people around you. And the core goal when you're coaching or leading with a growth mindset is really to create an environment, a culture, where growth is consistently valued more than static perfection, where learning is actively encouraged, and where mistakes are seen as normal, even necessary parts of the process.
And a first step, perhaps unsurprisingly, is modeling it yourself. Walk the talk.
Absolutely critical. People pay far more attention to what you do than what you just say. If you want others to embrace challenges, be open about their struggles, and seek feedback without fear, you absolutely have to demonstrate those behaviors yourself.
Oh.
Share your own learning journey. Talk about a skill you're currently tweaking to improve. Mention a mistake you made recently and what you learned from it. Discuss a challenge you faced and how you worked through it, maybe including the strategies you tried that didn't work at first. The Microsoft example you included, particularly the shift under Satya Nadella, is just a masterclass in this top-down modeling.
Right, you mentioned that earlier. Tell me a bit more about that transformation at Microsoft, the know-it-all to learn-it-all shift.
Nadella recognized that the previous culture, by many accounts, had become very know-it-all. It was perceived as highly competitive internally, maybe a bit siloed, and quite risk-averse. Knowledge was power, and sometimes people hoarded it. Mistakes were feared because they could impact status. He very deliberately set out to shift this to a learn-it-all culture.
And this wasn't just a slogan on posters.
No, it was enacted through visible leadership behavior. Managers were actively encouraged, even expected, to share their own development goals, to admit when they didn't know something, to ask questions. They started explicitly rewarding experimentation, learning from failures, and cross-team collaboration, even if a specific project didn't hit all its initial targets but generated valuable learning.
So it modeled vulnerability and a commitment to learning right from the top.
Exactly. And according to the sources, this created immense psychological safety throughout the organization. It freed people up to take more calculated risks, to collaborate more openly, and crucially, to admit when they needed help or had made a mistake without fearing negative repercussions.
And that culture shift is often directly linked to Microsoft's resurgence, their increased innovation and market value over the past decade.
Absolutely. It fundamentally changed how people approached their work and interacted with each other. It allowed the inherent talent within the company to flourish in a new way. Now, another key tactic in coaching others, directly related to Dweck's work, is how you give praise and feedback.
We talked about this for self-talk, focusing on process, not just outcome. How does it apply when talking to others?
It's fundamentally the same principle, just applied externally. The key is to avoid praising innate, fixed talent. Resist saying things like, You're so smart, or you're just a natural at this.
Why? That sounds positive.
It sounds positive, but Dweck's research strongly suggests it can inadvertently reinforce a fixed mindset. Instead, focus your praise on the process and specific actions the person took. Say things like, I really saw the effort you put into understanding that complex concept, or that was a really clever strategy you used to approach that difficult problem, or I've noticed a significant improvement in your presentation skills since you started practicing X.
So praise, specific effort, effective strategies, persistence, tangible improvement.
Exactly. The sources underscore this repeatedly, because that sends the message that those controllable actions are the things that lead to success, not some fixed gift they may or may not possess. Praising someone for being smart can actually make them fear future challenges because they worry they might fail and reveal they aren't as inherently smart as people think.
Whereas praising effort and process makes them more resilient.
Yes, and more eager to tackle difficult tasks, because they understand that's where the growth actually happens. You're explicitly valuing the hard work, the determination, the learning strategies, the perseverance over just raw, static talent.
Encouraging challenges is also vital for fostering growth in others, I assume. You can't grow if you stay in the comfort zone.
Definitely not. To foster growth, you need to provide people with opportunities that require them to stretch, to learn new things, to develop new skills. This means assigning challenging but generally achievable tasks or projects. Stretch assignments.
And making it okay if they struggle a bit.
Absolutely. Make it clear up front that you anticipate some difficulty, that setbacks are a normal part of the learning process when tackling something new or hard. Pair these stretch assignments with appropriate support, maybe mentorship, maybe access to resources, maybe just checking in regularly, and crucially, encourage them to ask questions and seek help. Frame asking for help not as a sign of weakness, but as a smart strategy for learning and effective problem solving.
One source mentioned framing success as often coming from applying the right strategies, working hard, and asking for help.
Yes, make questions like, what did we learn from this attempt? And how can we improve our approach going forward? A regular, normal part of your team's or family's conversation.
Now, normalizing failure, especially in many work environments, that can be a really tough sell. Failure often has negative consequences.
It is tough, culturally, but it's absolutely essential if you want to build a genuine growth culture. If people are afraid of making mistakes because failure is met with blame, punishment, or embarrassment, they will play it safe. They will avoid risks. They will hide their errors. And that stifles innovation, prevents learning, and ultimately hinders performance.
So the goal is psychological safety around mistakes.
Yes. You need to actively create a psychologically safe space where mistakes can be discussed openly, honestly, and importantly, without judgment.
Treating failure as data, just like we discussed for our personal mindset shift.
Precisely. When something goes wrong, the focus of the discussion needs to be on understanding what happened, why did it happen, and most importantly, what can we learn from this experience to improve for the future. Lead with curiosity. Help me understand, not accusation. Why did you...
Frame it as an experiment that yielded unexpected data.
Exactly. Okay, that didn't yield the result we wanted. What information did we get from this attempt? What insights does this give us for our next approach? Some innovative organizations even have concepts like failure celebrations or learning reviews, not celebrating the failure itself, obviously, but celebrating the courage to try something ambitious and the valuable learning that resulted from it, even if it didn't succeed. The key is to consistently replace punitive reactions with constructive, forward-looking dialogue that reinforces that learning from mistakes is valued and expected.
And using that powerful language of growth, like not yet, when coaching or giving feedback to others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just as powerful externally as it is internally. Consciously intersperse the word yet in your feedback. Instead of telling someone they aren't good at something, frame it as they haven't mastered it yet.
The Chicago high school example you mentioned earlier.
It's one of the most poignant illustrations of this in action, as detailed in the sources. Replacing failing grades with not yet fundamentally changed the message to students. It went from you are a failure, a fixed identity, to you are on a learning curve and mastery is still possible, a growth process.
It leaves the door open. It provides hope instead of finality.
Exactly. It shifts the perspective from a static judgment about current ability to a dynamic process of development. So when a colleague says, I just can't figure out this new software, you might respond with, yeah, it's tricky, you can't figure it out yet, let's break it down, maybe find some tutorials. When a child struggles with homework, focus on the process. Okay, you didn't get this type of problem right this time, but what did you learn from trying these steps? We haven't quite mastered this kind of fraction yet, but with some more practice, we definitely will. It's a simple linguistic tweak that moves the focus from a perceived fixed deficiency to a skill that can be developed over time.
And finally, underlying all this encouragement and reframing is the need to actually provide the support and resources required for growth. Belief isn't enough on its own.
The belief in potential is crucial, yes, but it can feel hollow or even frustrating if it's not backed up by enabling that potential. This means offering relevant training opportunities, connecting people with mentors or experts who can guide them, ensuring they have access to the necessary tools or information, and importantly, giving them the time and psychological space required for learning and deliberate practice.
Encourage knowledge sharing, too.
Yes, foster an environment where people feel comfortable sharing what they're learning and helping each other out. When you see someone struggling, don't just tell them to try harder or have a growth mindset. Ask specifically how you can support them. Guide them to relevant resources. Help them brainstorm different strategies. Position yourself as a catalyst for their growth.
And remember to celebrate their improvements along the way.
Definitely. Point out concrete progress, no matter how small. I noticed your explanations were much clearer this time. You handled that customer query really smoothly. Reinforcing that effort leads to tangible progress, creates a positive feedback loop that fuels continued motivation and effort.
So, to sum up the coaching aspect, by consistently modeling a growth mindset yourself, praising process and strategy, encouraging worthwhile challenges, normalizing failure as learning, using empowering language like yet, and providing tangible support and resources. That's how you create an environment where people feel safe to learn, eager to stretch their abilities, and genuinely confident in their capacity to grow.
Exactly. It cultivates adaptability, innovation, resilience, and persistence, not just in individuals, but potentially across an entire team, organization, or family. It's not about a one-time training session. It's about embodying and consistently enacting these principles in your daily interactions and structures.
Okay, let's really solidify all this by revisiting some of those compelling real-world examples highlighted in your sources. We've touched on them, but seeing them laid out really emphasizes the power of this mindset shift in action.
Absolutely. The transformation at Microsoft, under Satya Nadella, as we've discussed, is arguably one of the most prominent corporate examples in recent times. He very consciously dismantled that old know-it-all hierarchy and culture and instilled this learn-it-all ethos.
Which involved leaders modeling vulnerability, changing reward systems.
Right. Managers openly discussing their own learning needs and mistakes, performance reviews, shifting focus to include rewarding experimentation, collaboration, and learning from failures, not just hitting specific metrics perfectly.
And the results were pretty dramatic.
They were. Microsoft's stock value, market relevance, and pace of innovation all saw a significant resurgence. It wasn't just cosmetic. The shift permeated the organization. The ability of Microsoft employees to pivot so quickly and effectively to remote work during the pandemic, as noted in your sources, is often cited as a testament to how deeply this growth mindset had taken root. They approached a novel, incredibly challenging situation with flexibility, collaboration, and a willingness to learn new ways of working together. It demonstrated how organizations that genuinely lean into a growth mindset become more resilient, more creative, and ultimately higher performing.
Sarah Blakely's journey with Spanx is another powerful story, this one more about individual resilience driven by a growth mindset, particularly her unique relationship with failure.
Absolutely. Her father's intentional tradition of celebrating failure, asking, "What did you fail at today?" It wasn't just a quirky parenting tactic. It was a direct, repeated lesson in reframing setbacks. It fundamentally taught her that failure isn't a sign of personal inadequacy. It's a necessary, even valuable step in the process of trying ambitious things and learning.
So when she started Spanx with no background in the industry.
Exactly. She faced rejection after rejection from manufacturers, from buyers, from potential investors. A fixed mindset would almost certainly have interpreted those rejections as proof. I don't have what it takes. My idea is flawed. This is impossible.
But she saw them as, okay, that approach didn't work yet. What's a different angle?
Precisely. She treated each no not as a verdict, but as data. She learned from each interaction, refined her pitch, adjusted her strategy, and persevered with incredible grit. Her ability to see failure as valuable information rather than a final judgment on her ability unlocked the determination required to push through immense resistance and eventually revolutionize an entire industry. She really embodies the idea that not trying enough is often more dangerous than trying and failing. She never saw a dead end, only a problem to be solved with a not yet solution.
And then the examples of not yet actually being implemented in schools are incredibly moving. They show this power impacting young students at a really fundamental level.
They really are. That Chicago high school that replaced failing grades with not yet, it fundamentally altered the students' perception of themselves and their potential futures. A failing grade in a traditional fixed system often implicitly tells a student, you are not capable. This is your label. Replacing it with not yet sends a profoundly different message. You haven't mastered this skill yet, but you are on a learning curve. Mastery is still possible, and we believe you can get there.
It provided hope. It motivated students to keep putting in effort instead of just giving up. And it led to improved pass rates.
Yes, the source highlights the profound psychological impact. And this wasn't limited to just one school or demographic, showing the broad applicability.
Right. The sources mentioned other examples, too.
Yes, like the Harlem kindergartners who started the year with very low basic skills, some reportedly barely able to hold a pencil correctly, but through dedicated effort from the students, strategic teaching methods, and critically, a strong belief from their teachers in their capacity to grow, a growth mindset culture in the classroom, they ended up reaching the 95th percentile on a national academic achievement test.
That's incredible progress.
It is. Or the example of the South Bronx fourth graders, who were considered a failing class, particularly in math. But with similar growth mindset interventions, relentless encouragement, explicit teaching about brain plasticity, your brain gets stronger when you struggle, focusing on effort and strategies, they went on to rank #1 in the state on the standardized math exam.
Wow. These stories powerfully demonstrate that neuroplasticity isn't just a theory. It means individuals who might be starting behind can make truly incredible progress and excel when their effort, effective strategies, and crucially, the belief in their capacity to learn are actively fostered.
Absolutely. These examples, from huge corporations to individual entrepreneurs to very young students in challenging circumstances, they really underscore a common, powerful truth.
Which is?
That in every single instance, a shift towards, or the cultivation of, a growth mindset unlocked potential that likely would have remained dormant or been abandoned entirely under the weight of a fixed mindset's limitations. Whether it was the belief of individuals in their own capacity to learn and adapt, or the belief of leaders and teachers in the capacity of others to grow, choosing to operate from a perspective of potential and development created new pathways to success that simply wouldn't have existed otherwise.
The fixed mindset, with its inherent self-imposed limits, could easily have derailed any one of those stories. But the growth mindset allowed them to flourish instead. This has been such a rich, deep dive, packed with foundational concepts, the science backing it up, important nuances to avoid pitfalls, really practical strategies, and truly inspiring examples. The core message feels, well, revolutionary in its simplicity and genuinely empowering. Your mindset, how you think about your abilities, it isn't some fixed, predetermined thing you're just stuck with.
It's flexible. It's malleable. It's far from set in stone. By understanding the fundamental difference between the fixed and growth mindset, by becoming more aware of when your own thinking falls into those fixed limiting patterns, and by consciously, intentionally applying the strategies we've discussed, you have the power to fundamentally change how you perceive and respond to challenges, to opportunities, to your own capabilities.
And crucially, this isn't just motivational fluff or positive thinking. It's deeply supported by decades of solid psychological research and the hard science of neuroplasticity. That science shows your brain is capable of continuous growth and adaptation throughout your entire life.
Think about that for a moment. Your brain can physically change and grow stronger based on how you use it. Every time you choose to embrace a challenging task instead of shrinking from it.
Every time you persist through a frustrating setback instead of giving up.
Every time you actively seek out constructive feedback, even when it's uncomfortable.
Or try a new strategy after something didn't work the first time.
You are quite literally strengthening those neural pathways associated with learning, resilience, adaptability, and that core growth mindset. You're building a stronger brain.
Okay, so to really distill the key takeaways and the actionable steps from all the source material we've covered, what are some concrete things people listening can start doing right away, like today?
All right, let's boil it down. First, make yet your new favorite word. Seriously, start consciously adding yet when you catch yourself or even others saying, I can't, or I'm not good at this. Make it a deliberate habit. It's such a powerful micro-intervention. It turns a full stop into a comma.
Not a no, just a not yet. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, second.
Second, practice replacing judgment with curiosity. When you encounter difficulty, either yourself or watching others, or when a mistake happens, instead of immediately thinking that's bad or they're incompetent or I'm incompetent, pause. Actively shift to genuine curiosity. Ask, what happened here? What can be learned from this situation? What could help them or me get better next time?
Third takeaway.
Third, consciously celebrate effort and progress, both yours and others. Actively look for opportunities to acknowledge the hard work, the persistence shown, the clever strategies used, and the small incremental improvements made, even if the final outcome isn't perfect yet. Really value the journey, not just the finish line. Fourth, internalize and even teach the brain science. Remind yourself, and others when appropriate, that the brain is like a muscle. It gets stronger with use and challenge. Understanding the reality of neuroplasticity provides a hopeful and scientifically grounded basis for believing in the power of effort and learning. It's not just wishful thinking.
And fifth actionable takeaway.
And fifth, make learning from mistakes normal. Actively work to create a safe-to-fail zone, at least for yourself, and ideally for anyone you influence. Explicitly communicate through words and actions that mistakes are expected and okay whenever you're pushing boundaries or learning something new. The important part isn't avoiding mistakes. It's discussing what went wrong openly and what was learned from it, without assigning blame. Turn setbacks into team debriefs or personal learning reviews.
Adopting a growth mindset really is a lifelong practice, isn't it? It's not a destination you arrive at.
Not at all. You might find it easier to apply these principles in certain areas, initially maybe learning a new skill for a hobby you enjoy. But as you get more comfortable with these mental habits, you'll likely notice they naturally start to permeate other areas of your life too. How you approach professional challenges, your relationships, your health goals, even just your ability to navigate unexpected changes and uncertainty.
And as you increasingly operate from this growth perspective, you'll likely experience a shift not just in what you do, but in how you feel.
Very likely. You might find yourself approaching new things with more optimism and less apprehension. Challenges that once seemed intimidating might start to feel intriguing, maybe even exciting, seeing them as opportunities to test your capacity to learn and adapt.
And crucially, resilience should increase.
Dramatically. Setbacks and failures won't feel like devastating blows or final proof of your inherent limits anymore. Instead, you'll have that stronger internal voice, that growth mindset voice, reminding you, okay, that didn't work out as planned. What did I learn? How can I approach this differently next time? I can figure this out. I can grow from this experience.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the incredible power of mindset, here is that final provocative thought for you, our listener, and a concrete action challenge drawn directly from the application sections of the source material.
Think right now, just for a moment, about one specific aspect of your life where you have consistently felt limited by what feels like a fixed ability. Maybe something you've told yourself or others, I'm just not a kinky kind of person.
It could be anything at all, a perceived lack of creativity, feeling like you're just not a numbers person, believing you're too shy for certain social or professional situations, thinking you're inherently bad at managing money or a terrible public speaker. Just identify one area where that fixed mindset feels strong for you.
Got it. Now, here's the challenge. Starting today, actively decide to challenge that specific belief. Pick just one of the practical tips we discussed, just one, and intentionally apply it to that specific area.
Maybe the very next time that limiting thought about that area crosses your mind, you immediately tack on the word yet.
Or maybe you break down the daunting skill involved into one tiny, manageable first step and commit to learning just that one little piece this week.
Maybe you find one person you know who is good at that thing and humbly ask them for just one piece of specific feedback or advice on how they approach it.
Or maybe you simply give yourself permission, consciously, to be a total beginner in that area for a while, allowing yourself to make mistakes without judgment as you explore it.
Just take that first, small, deliberate step to chip away at that long-held fixed belief.
You might be genuinely surprised, even astonished, at what becomes possible over time when you choose to believe in your capacity to learn and grow in that area. And you back that belief up with consistent, conscious action. Remember, your mindset isn't fixed. It is incredibly adaptable and profoundly powerful.
With intention, with awareness, and with consistent practice of these strategies, you really do hold the key to reshaping not just your mindset, but by extension, reshaping what you believe is possible for your life. Every single day offers a fresh chance to choose a growth mindset.
Embrace the power of yet. Step into challenges with curiosity, not fear. And go forward knowing that you are fundamentally a work in progress, and that is not a limitation. It is the most exciting, expansive, and empowering truth about being human.
You've absolutely got this.